Some states want AI innovation, others want regulation. In Missouri, well, they want to make sure AI doesn't get married. Let's take a look at AI legislation in 2025. Welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number. I'm Sarah, and with me, as always, is Stephen. Today, we're diving into one of the hottest topics in state legislatures right now, AI regulation. It's a subject that lawmakers have been buzzing about for years, and last year we covered some really key AI-related bills like combating AI deepfakes in elections, California's bold move to tame the AI beast in healthcare, and, of course, War Games reboot, Congress vs. the Robot Apocalypse, where we learned that, thankfully, Congress is not planning to let AI launch nuclear weapons anytime soon. But today, we're focusing on a new wave of legislation aimed at curbing algorithmic discrimination. That is, making sure AI systems in areas such as healthcare, hiring, or law enforcement don't discriminate against people based on race, gender, and so on. But before we totally dive into things, let's just take a second to look at the last 2-ish years since ChatGPT, the AI of AIs, hit the market. We've seen a lot of stuff change over the last 2 years. There's been a lot of fights. There's been it feels like this every 3 weeks of what's happening with AI. It's really on the up. It's really on the down. We had the DeepGram situation earlier this year where people thought that completely negated everything with OpenAI, and then that changed, and then here, there, everywhere. You and I both use AI in different pieces of our life. I don't think, either one of us are super dependent on it, but definitely trying to figure out how these types of tools can help us become more efficient and effective. Have you noticed anything interesting or started using any new AI tech lately?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is worth just sort of thinking for a moment about how everything has changed over the past couple of years. That I now feel that I couldn't do my job without AI. I use it in so many different ways, just little ways. But
Yeah.
if I was suddenly stripped of ChatGPT and Midjourney and Claude, which is my favorite, and if they all went away tomorrow, I'd be bereft. I don't know what I'd do. So if I need to do a bit of marketing, of course, I'm going to ask Claude for some copy. If I need to produce images for anything, I'm going to go to Midjourney. I'm going to go to ChatGPT. When I write a blog post, I'm going to get it to check. I'm going to get it to give me some initial ideas and do some drafting for me. It's just every little thing. The first thing now you think is let's go to AI. If you're going to book a trip, let's ask AI where it thinks we should go and what it thinks we should do. And
Yeah.
and it has become ubiquitous already. But one thing that really struck me was the other day I was producing an image for the blog post that we're actually talking about today, actually, and I wanted a picture of a robot being chained down by some people to represent people trying to regulate AI. And I produced an image. I went, actually that happy with it, but it was all right. But then I noticed that ChatGPT now has an additional little button you can push and says, produce some videos for me. So I thought, oh, well, that's good. So I basically put in the same prompt and said, make a video. And in the space of 2 minutes, it made this, I think it's about a 5-second video of these people trying to chain down this robot as it was like struggling like that. And it was a weird looking thing, terrible. Didn't look very realistic at all and quite creepy, but also quite startling in the fact that AI can actually do this now, and it made me think that this is another revolution. And if you read about AI as I do, you'll see that the internet and particularly social media is full of these homemade videos now. Some of
Yeah.
them really clever, some very disturbing, some very funny, of course, but also very disturbing and very worrying. The ethical implications of all these things, and the fact that just the way it's changing our life so fast, and how are lawmakers possibly supposed to keep up with all of this?
Yeah, and with all of the AI stuff that just came out with ChatGPT in the last couple of weeks, there's a huge conversation
Mm,
about copyright. And the super famous anime illustrator Ghibli, I was watching some video, and it's a 5-second video of a marketplace that was in one of his movies, and it took the team
mm,
like a year and a half to make. And so your
yeah.
crazy robot chains video that,
Mm,
5 seconds took 2 minutes of ChatGPT, and his art that he is so proud of, he does
mm,
it the right way, took 1.5 years. And this
yeah.
AI is just completely ripping it off. It was so funny. I started seeing all these pictures of everybody looking
Yep.
like they were anime, and I was like, what is this new AI thing that's going on? And then a lot of my
It's
friends are, really into anime and started
yeah.
posting about it. We're super upset.
Well, there's basically two ways to look at this if you're the actual creator. You can say this is terrible. Everybody's stealing my stuff. This is mine. It belongs to me. You have no right to produce these images.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can sort of take a more pragmatic view and go, well, actually, now probably about 10 times as many people know my name as they did before, and they know my stuff, and they may possibly go and buy my stuff from me. So actually, this is fantastic for me, getting my stuff out there, reaching a much wider audience. People are really creative and people are really funny. Let's just let them see what they can come up with, and maybe they can be even more creative than me. And if so, that's fantastic. And by the way, I'll probably make some money out of it in the long run.
Well, and one of the things that I do think is interesting about AI and those types of things is I fancy myself a creative person, but I like to crochet and sew. So it's very patterns, those types of things.
Mm.
And my best friend is an amazing artist. She's a painter, a drawer. She's very creative. And it's funny because I don't think I've ever thought about things that I would create if I could create like that, because I just know that
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have the
Yes.
skills. And so it's
Yeah.
one of those interesting things where, yeah, I do think we'll see a lot more interesting stuff come out because people who just
Yeah.
didn't have the skills before. I'm even thinking about how we use AI here at Build Track 50. And, I've been working here for over 11 years now. And the AI summary is my favorite feature that we have because I have
Yeah.
spent probably a year of my life over the last 11 years reading through bills and being like, so what
Yeah.
does this mean? I don't know
Exactly.
this
And now you
legal
don't have to do it
jargon and all of
anymore.
that.
Yeah. And we've got some really exciting features in the pipeline that will really help people find the bills they want and understand them and share them much more easily as well. So yes, we're really excited about AI here. But it's important that it's regulated properly.
Yes, yes. And with that, I think let's get into it, Stephen. So I know that Colorado Senate Bill 205 has kind of set the stage for many of the efforts around curbing this algorithmic discrimination. Can you give us a quick rundown on what that bill does?
Absolutely. So SB 205, which was signed into law last May, so it is actually a law, it's not a bill that's currently going through the legislature, is the first comprehensive AI discrimination regulation at the state level. So it's attracted a lot of attention. People are focusing on it really closely. It takes a risk-based approach and it specifically targets AI systems that influence what's called consequential decisions. So things like hiring, education, housing, healthcare, and financial services, and not so much producing funny images for the internet. The goal is to prevent what's called algorithmic discrimination, as you said, which is basically a fancy term for saying that an AI is making biased decisions that negatively impact protected groups.
But why would AI do that? Is it because it doesn't like us?
No, well, yes, AI does hate us. I'm sure secretly it hates us. But no, this kind of bias arises through a number of ways. The source material that's used to train the AI may over or underrepresent certain groups. It can also be caused by the developer who's actually developing the algorithms unfairly weighting certain factors in algorithmic decision making based on their own conscious or unconscious biases. And there are some really high profile examples of this that have hit the news over the past few years, really. So there's a system whose job it is to decide which offenders are likely to reoffend. And it decided that black defendants in court cases are more likely to reoffend than white ones, even when all other things are equal. There was another system that underestimated black patients' medical needs. And then another one that was responsible for sifting job applications that was just automatically excluding older applicants. And in particular, it was excluding women at a younger age than men. So it was doing two bits of discrimination there. Now, we should point out at this point that opponents of this kind of regulation do claim that these cases are quite isolated cases. Yes, they attracted a lot of attention, but it's basically because there aren't that many of them. And that they were caught by existing regulation and corrected. So it's quite easy to catch these things and correct them, at least according to the opponents of regulation.
I remember when OpenAI first came out, somebody started training it with a whole bunch of really racist stuff, and then it started
Yeah.
spitting back like some pretty terrifying stuff, which they figured out pretty quickly. But if that's not figured out quickly, who knows what could happen?
Well, absolutely, and it's more difficult now because obviously the large language models are trained on vast quantities of material, so it's impossible to police everything. And where does that material come from? Who's allowing these AIs to actually use material for training and who isn't, and does that therefore introduce biases? It's quite complicated, really. So the Colorado law then requires developers to take reasonable care to prevent discrimination. It also requires that they document system limitations and be very, very transparent about the risks. On the other side, companies that use AI, which the law calls deployers, have to conduct risk assessments and disclose when AI is making decisions about people, which all seems quite reasonable.
Right. And there's been some concerns about implementing it, right? Governor Polis even called the compliance requirements complex. What's happening around that?
Yes, yes. So Polis signed the bill, but he had some major reservations. And so to address his issues, Colorado formed what's called the AI Impact Task Force, which has been working on refinements to the law. In February, just a couple of months ago, they issued a report and they suggested a whole raft of changes to make the law more workable. So things like clarifying the vague definitions, adjusting impact assessment requirements, possibly tweaking the enforcement mechanisms. Now, it's interesting because their work has really highlighted one of the fundamental problem with regulation of any kind, really. When you produce a new law, particularly a brand new law in a new area, there's always going to be words and terms that aren't fully defined. And so if you try and define them in the regulation itself, then you end up just creating even more confusion by having yet more text that needs to be interpreted in some way by lawyers. So what you tend to do is just put the law out there and then wait for case law to arise, which actually helps you decide how this law should be implemented. So basically, somebody will get taken to court, the judge will make a ruling on it, and then that will become case law that will help other companies know how they should actually implement this particular law. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that nobody wants to be the first company that has to get taken to court because it's obviously bad for your PR, it's really expensive, and obviously no one wants to go to court. So it actually exercises a chilling effect if you're not careful, as all these companies step back and say, well, we're just going to wait a bit until somebody else takes the plunge and actually faces these possible court cases. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to do this.
Yeah, I think we see that in a lot of legislation where they're like, let's get something out and see how the cookie crumbles, so to say. But
exactly.
Okay, well, while Colorado figures that out, other states are also jumping on board. What does the broader 2025 legislative landscape look like when it relates to this?
Well, it's very busy. I mean, we're tracking nearly 80 bills across multiple states which are related to this kind of regulation, many of which draw their inspiration from this Colorado bill, but sort of add on their own twists. So some of the highlights: Illinois, we have SB 2203, which is called the Preventing Algorithmic Discrimination Act. So this one's notable because it includes a private right of action, meaning individuals can sue for damages if they're harmed by AI discrimination. So that could be a real game changer there. Wow. New York has a number of bills, but one of them, S1169 in the Senate, it requires independent third-party audits of high-risk AI systems every 18 months. So the idea really is to prevent companies from just checking their own homework. You want somebody else on the outside actually looking at it. Vermont has House Bill 341, which is pretty wild, this one. It introduces the concept of an inherently dangerous AI system, AI that's so risky it needs a whole new regulatory framework all to itself. And it creates a division of artificial intelligence to oversee AI use statewide.
Okay.
Then you have Texas. Of course, we have Texas. Texas has House Bill 1709. It takes a more prohibitive stance. It bans certain AI applications outright, like AI-driven social scoring and systems designed to manipulate human behavior.
Okay.
Then we have Missouri, of course. So we mentioned Missouri at the beginning. Missouri is always in the mix somewhere, isn't it? So in Missouri, we have House Bill 1462. Trying to keep things interesting, their bill is called the AI Non-Sentience and Responsibility Act. It includes a range of different provisions, basically saying that AI cannot be classed as a human being, and it bans them from getting married. Because, these are obviously the priorities. Now, let's just hope that our AI overlords don't get too upset by being banned for marriage, because who knows how they could retaliate.
I gotta say, AI marriage bans. It's the year for people bringing back marriage bans, 2025. I did not see that one coming. All right. But okay. So we've got some states focused on compliance, others on outright bans, others trying to set up an entirely new regulatory structure. Generally, it just seems like people are confused about what to do with this, how it's going to be pervasive in society, and how are the businesses that are getting impacted by this reacting to all of this.
Well, the reaction has been mixed, to say the least. On the one hand, companies want to avoid lawsuits and regulatory headaches. But on the other, compliance with all these different state laws could get really, really expensive. So there are certain critics that have compared them to the EU AI Act. Now, the EU passed a law which is seen as being really the first really comprehensive AI law in the world, really. So a lot of people have been looking at it very closely. And they do claim that a lot of the text from these bills is directly lifted from the EU AI Act. And a report from the Centre for European Policy Studies about the AI Act estimated that EU regulation could add anywhere from 5 to 17% to corporate AI development costs. And that's a lot, really. So people are scared that similar laws being introduced in the US could have a similar cost and really sort of dampen down this innovation at a time when it's really, really important for the US that it stays ahead of the game.
Yes, they call it the Brussels effect. States copying European laws without considering the US economic and legal landscape. Do you think that's a real concern here?
Oh, yes. I mean, it really could be. So you've got a situation where everything's moving really, really fast. States don't really know how to regulate. They don't know what they're regulating. And to be honest, the legislators themselves probably don't really understand it. So there's always going to be a temptation then to reach out to laws that are in existence and say, oh, that seems like a good idea. Let's sort of borrow that one. And that's often a good thing, particularly if the law's been quite successful, to say, well, let's copy something that's been successful. And Colorado's law really does have lawmakers sort of scratching their heads on how to enforce it. And other states passing similar bills before we've even figured out what works. And Colorado's actually figured out exactly how to make their law work. So critics argue these bills could become some of the most significant tech regulations in US history without clear proof of any widespread harm or, in fact, that they're going to help the situation.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing where I feel like it took a really long time for a lot of regulations that we're seeing now as it relates to the internet, safety protocols, things like that. And I'm wondering if this kind of throwing the rule book at AI is because we have seen a lot of harm from not doing the right kinds of regulation on the internet over the last 20 years. Obviously, we've been in a huge innovative boom in the last 20 years with the internet too. And so I agree, it's going to be really interesting. But I also think having that proof of widespread harm, the widespread part of that is the scary part of it, which we're trying to stay away from. So, where do we go from here? If these laws are coming, how do states strike the right balance between protecting people and not causing widespread harm, but also not crushing innovation and kind of what seems to be a new frontier?
Yes. That's the problem that countries all around the world are grappling with at the moment, and I'm seeing US as well. So just a few sort of easy suggestions for things that they should perhaps do. So first off, you need to refine these key definitions. So terms like algorithmic discrimination, consequential decisions are really fuzzy, and there needs to be a clear understanding of what they mean. The clearer the language, the easier it'll be for businesses to actually comply and avoid this sort of chilling effect when they're saying, I don't understand what this means, so I'm going to just wait and see, let somebody else make the plunge first.
Right. If you don't know what a law requires, how can you actually follow it?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So then there's the small business exemptions. So some states like Hawaii and Illinois set the exemption bar at just 25 employees, which is pretty low, really, especially for startups that might be using AI but don't have the resources for these quite heavy compliance costs.
So instead of stifling innovation, giving smaller businesses a little bit more breathing room?
Right. I mean, that's the American way, isn't it? And that leads to outcome-based regulation. So instead of prescribing exactly how companies should prevent AI bias, lawmakers could focus on measurable fairness outcomes. So it gives businesses flexibility to find the best way to comply without being boxed into rigid technical requirements.
That makes sense, but also seems to be a little convoluted. What about enforcement of all of this?
Well, this is a really big one, isn't it? So, giving companies a cure period. So, instead of immediately slapping businesses with fines, lawmakers should allow time to fix compliant issues first. And it makes the process more collaborative rather than just punitive. And it should help with compliance as well, then, because companies feel more comfortable about holding their hands up, saying, "Oh, actually, yeah, we've cocked up here. We haven't quite done this, but we're going to fix it now."
Okay, one other question I had just going through my brain of thinking about you saying in Illinois and in Texas and Missouri, we have this, and this, and they're all these crazy different approaches. And
Yeah.
we're having a lot of states' rights conversations right now. We're having a lot of states' approaches conversations right now across all different types of things. So, what happens if every state starts doing its own thing?
Then you have chaos, pure chaos, really. So that's why avoiding a patchwork of conflicting laws is so important. Now, the Biden administration, of course, realized this, and they were in the process of introducing regulations which were going to be nationwide to sort of help this problem. The Trump administration taken a very different view. They immediately got rid of all of that and stopped it all because they want the innovation. They want companies to be able to do their own thing. So if you end up with states then taking on this job and every state passing slightly different AI regulations, companies operating across state lines will have a nightmare trying to comply with all of them. So some level of coordination is really crucial. But having said all of that, of course, this is a very common issue in the United States. It is one of the big disadvantages of the federal system. Federal system has a lot of huge advantages. This is one of the disadvantages. So it's fair to say that American companies are pretty good at dealing with these kinds of issues, and they all have big teams of compliance officers. And a lot of our customers at Build Track 50 are in exactly that field.
Well, it sounds like lawmakers have their work cut out for them and these compliance armies at these companies.
Yeah.
And I mean, considering how fast AI is evolving, this is just the beginning. And we're after smart regulation, but not just regulation for regulation's sake.
Exactly. States need to be really careful not to kill AI innovation in an attempt to make it fairer, and basically not to give into scaremongering as well, which is difficult in this field. I mean, is it going to be Skynet where it's going to wipe us all out, or are we all going to find ourselves in the Matrix? Well, probably not, to be honest. But there are very real threats there and real risks that do need to be handled. And the next few months will be critical, really, as these bills progress and as Colorado decides how to tweak SB 205. So no doubt we'll have plenty more to discuss about this in the future.
And we'll be right here to break it all down. Well, thanks for joining Bill Track 50 Beyond the Bill Number. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, check out our latest AI bill tracker on the website, and always look beyond that bill number. We'll see you next time.